From Transport Topics in Washington, D.C., this is RoadSigns. Here is your host, Seth Clevenger.
Thank you for listening to RoadSigns, the podcast series from Transport Topics that explores the trends and technologies that are shaping the future of trucking. In this episode, we're going to discuss the workers who maintain and repair the increasingly high-tech trucks that move the nation's freight. We've been hearing for years that the transportation industry is struggling to attract a new generation of maintenance technicians. So how can fleets and repair shops begin to solve this persistent challenge? And what will it take to attract that next generation of workers to our industry? We'll set out to answer that question in this episode. To learn more, I recently spoke with leaders of American Trucking Association's Technology and Maintenance Council during the group's annual meeting in Atlanta. We considered a range of strategies to address the technician shortage and also discussed some highlights from the meeting. A bit later in the program, you'll hear from TMC's new chairman, Stacy Earnhardt. But we'll start with my conversation with TMC Executive Director Robert Braswell. Let's go ahead and play those interviews. We're here in Atlanta at the Technology and Maintenance Council's 2020 annual meeting and Transportation Technology exhibition, and I'm pleased to welcome TMC Executive Director Robert Braswell to the program.
Well, thank you. Great to be here.
Yeah, this is certainly a very busy time for TMC's membership and staff and vendors and all the other attendees, so thank you for taking time out of this very busy event to join us.
Well, my pleasure. You know, we have about 4,500 of our closest friends here at the event, and there's all sorts of technical activity. Of course, we're more than just a trade show. That's our thing. And, the main part of what we're doing here is developing industry best practices, recommended practices, and also providing a great deal of education to the attendees that come here, because we feel that that's one of the great services that we can provide is educating the industry on the state of the art of what's going on with maintenance, its management, and specification. We are unique, I think, in the sense that we bring in all segments of the industry together. Not just the fleets, not just the manufacturers, but, academia, educators, government folks, service providers. You name it, we got a different color badge for you, and that represents a different constituency. And so from those many voices, we try to develop consensus on all these really important issues that are going to shape the direction of our industry for many, many years to come.
Yeah, and one of those issues, of course, really a recurring theme, at TMC over the years and really just across the industry is workforce development. And a lot of times we think of that in terms of truck drivers, but this is certainly the case for truck maintenance operations as well. Finding that next generation of technicians who are going to repair and maintain the trucks in the future. So I'd like to delve into that a little bit. What do you believe are the most important steps for the industry to take to attract that next generation of technicians to our industry?
Sure. Well, one of the first things you got to do is you got to make sure that you're telling your story in a compelling way that will get the attention of not only your next-gen workforce, the students, right, matriculating from the various different educational institutions, whether it be high school, whether it be a 2-year community college, whether it be a 4-year college, but also the guidance counselors, the parents, the other people in the family that may or may not have or are influencers on those kind of decisions. So you need to be able to tell that story. And TMC has been partnering with other industry groups over the past several years to get beyond our own network, not just preaching to the choir, as it were, but trying to work with folks like the Tech Force Foundation, for example, that's doing a really good job of doing outreach to those to lay segments, I guess, as you call it, that are the influencers for the folks we're trying to reach. We're doing things with Tech Force Foundation. We just had a display ad, for example, in one of the NASCAR publications. I think it's their souvenir program that they do. It's new for us, right? Mm-hmm. So that's a reach of maybe 5 million viewers through the digital and the print media. Mm-hmm. But we're trying to find new, innovative ways of reaching out to people. And that particular ad is advertising the scholarship opportunities that are available through TMC, Tech Force Foundation. If you're having challenges with financing your education, there are opportunities out there. So many times we have these scholarships and people don't know about them, or they don't take advantage of the opportunity that's there. And it's a shame because they'll go unused. Right. So that's part of it. I think another part of it is making sure as an industry we're partnering with the schools. There are, through the ASC Education Foundation, for example, there are more than 200 schools in that network. They are developing curricula for students to become technicians. But are they teaching the right things? So the people here at TMC, the future employers of these students, they have to make sure that their expectations are worked into those curricula.
Yep.
And that's a very important part of it. We have a educator involvement task force through our educator committee, curriculum development task force as well, in that same group, and they're working on that. And so that's another part of the puzzle, making sure we match industry expectations with what's being taught in the schools. And then I think a third part of it is, I mean, quite frankly, you have to make sure that you are delivering the kind of expectations to the new workforce in terms of compensation, in terms of flex time, in terms of, it's just different now.
Right.
You're getting a new generation that doesn't want to drive. They want to live and work in close proximity. Maybe my generation was completely different. They were. I mean, there's nothing for me to get in a car with 90 minutes away. Those things are changing, and we have to reflect those changes. Also, it's difficult to become a service technician because unlike, you're in the plumbing business or maybe you're an electrician, you can get away with a bucket full of tools. You pretty much can ply your craft. Well, you get into this business, you better be bringing $10,000, $15,000 worth of tools to the job day one. And oh, by the way, I'm not buying that for you. Well, that's the model anyway.
Yes, right.
Maybe it's a little different. Maybe we have to change the way we look at that.
Sure.
So there's a lot of things to peel back on that onion, and I think we're trying to address them, as best we can.
Sure. And, there's also, I think, a perception, maybe, not the right perception out there in the general public about what exactly a truck technician does.
Absolutely.
Now, I mean, of course, there's still a need to turn wrenches, but, this is becoming increasingly a high-tech field. Technicians today are working with diagnostic software and really high-tech vehicles and onboard sensors, and they're really problem solvers using technology, but I'm not sure that the general public really thinks of it that way. Just how important is it to change that perception and really kind of spotlight all the technology and the sophistication of the job?
Yeah, I think you're right about that. The automotive sector has done a good job of that, I think. If you go down to your local car dealer and you get your vehicle serviced, you can see how high-tech it is, I think. They don't always think of that when it comes to trucking. And certainly the systems are getting very, very complex. And that is a story that we need to do a better job of telling, that this is not, your grandfather's job.
Right.
Although, we love grease. We still love grease. We still love wrenches. You can't get away with it. But you're right. There's a increasingly amount of diagnostics that go on to it. And the vehicles are diagnosing themselves. And you have to understand what the vehicle's telling you. And you're more than likely to use a handheld computer than you are to use a wrench in terms of the initial diagnosis, that triage that you do when the asset comes back to the barn, so to speak. So, yeah, absolutely. Better job of selling that message is important, and we need to do that.
In times like these, it's crucial to stay informed. Transport Topics is offering all the information you need to make business decisions in these unprecedented times. And in the wake of the many event cancellations and group gatherings, TT ensures a virtual way to consume business content and conversation. To join the conversation and stay ahead of the news, follow Transport Topics on all social outlets or by visiting ttn.ws/stay informed.
And speaking of technology, as we look ahead, the truck manufacturers and technology developers are starting to introduce some really interesting next-level technologies. We're seeing the introduction of electric propulsion systems in trucks.
Oh, yeah.
We're also seeing more and more advanced driver assist technology and automated
ADAS,
driving.
Sure.
And this is really starting to create a whole new frontier for truck maintenance. And this is going to be you think about maintaining and working on an electric truck is just so different. I mean, there's so many different components that suddenly appear on the vehicle. I mean, how much more training and how much more skills development will be required for this job over the years? It seems like even if you are fully on top of it today, is likely going to change a lot.
Well, let's look at it from a different perspective. Maybe you're going to start attracting a different demographic into the industry. Maybe you're going to be getting more of the folks that are trained as IT professionals coming in to do this kind of work into our industry, okay, as opposed to maybe some of the traditional tech type folks. So, that's part of it. It could be very, very, much more like being a certified IT professional, having to come in and work on those systems. But there'll always be a need for the traditional technicians.
Right.
I believe that's not going away. The vehicles may become more and more maintenance, I would never can say maintenance free, but less maintenance sensitive, especially if you're going to electric vehicles. Because we all know the story about how many moving parts are in an electric motor versus a diesel engine, for example.
Right.
It's just not. It's complicated. Of course, now once you put that electric a vehicle into a highly corrosive environment in the middle of winter for 6 months, come back and tell me how that performs. Okay, that's what I'm waiting to see. So, we still have to deal with those issues. But.
And there's certainly still tires and brakes and, all the common components.
Yeah, but even tires are changing. Think of that. It's not too far from the day when we will have tires that are airless. There won't be a need for inflation. They'll be, they don't work that way. Brakes, there will be a very different kind of braking system. Maybe we'll be moving to something like electromechanical braking that doesn't employ pneumatic systems,
So much to watch and so much that can change in the future.
Sure.
And, I also want to talk about some of the highlights from TMC this year. I know we're still kind of right in the thick of it, but...
feels like I've been here a month.
Yes, right. But one of the more interesting develops, I think, is the Texcelerate Now program.
Oh, we're very excited about
that's,
that.
FMCSA working together with industry,
Yes.
including TMC and ATA, all part of the effort. And the idea is to promote further adoption of ADAS, Advanced Driver Assist Technology. So, Robert, just explain the role that TMC is playing in this.
Well, sure. Well, as part of the coalition that is Texcelerate Now, TMC's role is to develop best practices, recommended practices that will facilitate the maintenance specification of these systems. You can make the case for the ROI based on safety, but you can also make a case in terms of the equipment. And also, if certain types of ADAS, for example, are more expensive to maintain, or maybe there are certain types of engineering solutions that are better than others when it comes to implementing them on the vehicle, those are the kinds of things I think we're going to play a leading role in developing. We're also going to play a leading role in developing educational materials, because part of it is, what the heck is ADAS to start with? I mean, it's just alphabet soup out there. But we're going to be developing a series of videos in concert with our other partners in the coalition and training materials to educate in terms of what the 4 buckets are of technologies. And those buckets deal with either monitoring, warning, braking, or steering. And we think those are compelling stories to tell about the technology. We're going to get it out to not only the driver community, because those are the folks that really have to be convinced as the validity of those technologies, but also the fleet executives, fleet managers that are going to have to deal with them and spec them.
Certainly, and collision mitigation systems have been on the market for quite a while now, but you look at adoption, and of course it's far from universal when you look at the whole trucking industry.
Sure.
So, where do you think we are in terms of adoption today, and what will it take to boost adoption, and why is that so important for the industry?
That's a good question. One of the things we're doing right now is, and we're only a partner in this, but there are baseline surveys that are being administered to determine what is the level of acceptance and the level of the take level of these technologies. So I don't have the particular answer for that part of it. I think the adoption is obviously in the very beginning levels. But we're looking at ADAS systems beyond what, the warning systems, for example. Right. We're looking more, instead of is it lane departure warning? Okay, that's good. We're looking more at lane assist or lane keeping.
Active steering.
More active steering technologies that will intervene and prevent incidents that way. So, the technology is available today, different levels of adoption. I guess it all depends on how progressive the fleet is.
Right.
But that's what we're doing. That's one of the first phases, just like you say, identifying that baseline level and just to see if people know what it is we're talking about when we talk about these things. I think one of the things that we can bring to the table, too, is just standardizing the language.
Sure.
Just explaining what ADOS stands for. There's not really a clear consensus on that yet. Not a real clear consensus on what some of these terms we're using. Video-based monitoring systems versus maybe something like a camera-based monitoring system or a camera-based system or camera mirror. Where there's all these different terms. TMC has a industry standard called Vehicle Maintenance Reporting Standards, VMRS. That's one of the things we use to help standardize the language. With ABS, we had the same problems with ABS. You've got a part in ABS. It's a tooth wheel. It's a tone ring. It's an exciter ring. It's the same part. Just everybody calls it something different. So if we can bring some consistency to that, I think that's also a very important role to play.
Sure. And then I just want to kick it back to you for a final question, just for an overview. What really stands out to you the most about this year's show, this moment in the trucking industry? If you had to list a couple of top takeaways from TMC 2020, what would they be?
I think the idea that the industry is moving towards the connected whole. One of our main educational sessions is dealing with the combination vehicle as a connected whole. Vertical integration is not necessarily a bad thing. And we're seeing more and more of that as we go forth. There's one manufacturer that's been doing it for years, ever since the very beginning. But now it's getting so complicated, it's almost necessary to have strategic partners in that. And even if it's not just that part of it, just the idea that all these different systems having to work and talk and play nice together, that's becoming more and more important because you're getting smarter trailers, smarter tractors, smarter off-board systems, and they all have to integrate, work well to provide the value and the ROI that the customers are expecting.
Sure. Well, hey, this has been a great conversation, but I think that's a good stopping point. Thanks again for joining us, Robert. We really appreciate you taking the time.
My pleasure.
Did you know you can ask Alexa to open Transport Topics? In just 1 minute, you will hear the biggest trucking headlines of that day. Be prepared and start your morning off right with Transport Topics.
We're here in Atlanta at the Technology and Maintenance Council's 2020 annual meeting, and I'm pleased to welcome TMC's incoming chairman, Stacy Earnhardt of Best Logistics Group. Thanks for joining us, and congratulations on your term ahead as general chairman.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So let's begin with that. What are your top goals, Stacy, for your year ahead as TMC's chairman?
I guess most importantly, I will continue with the same agenda we've kind of started over the past couple of years. I think Mr. Calhoun and chairmen before him have really put us on a good road. And I don't see a lot of need to change that at the moment. The skilled labor force is obviously a hot topic and big issue that we need to continue to improve on. Getting the TMC voice heard and making sure the users are united and taking the data that we do here at TMC and pushing that through the industry and uniting as one. I mean, that's what TMC is, and so really that's my top two things right now is to make sure that we don't change the path because we're on a good road. And just because the new chairman's here doesn't mean we have to change the road.
And there's certainly a lot to do in those areas that you outlined. But tell us a little bit about your own career path and background in trucking, and the work you do today at Best Logistics Group.
So I guess I'll start with background. I started in the wash bay, washing trucks third shift, and just continued on. Fell in love with trucking like most people do in this industry, and went into a technician side, shop foreman, manager, director, and today I've actually expanded on the maintenance side a little bit to where I've also got a flatbed heavy haul operation that reports directly to me, as well as our warehousing and mobile storage. So I get a little different side of the operational business now as well. As all the duties of maintenance reporting up to me. So that's very exciting for me. A lot of new directions.
Sure. Well, as the saying goes, once you get into transportation, you tend to be in it for life, and that seems to ring true for a lot of people I meet in the industry.
That's correct. Both my parents were in the industry, and just I don't know, it's the right place to go.
Well, and as you mentioned, and as you certainly well know, technician recruiting and workforce development have been, really a persistent challenge for truck maintenance operations. And, what do you think are some of the best strategies to really bring more people into this career and help fill that labor gap?
I mean, strategies is kind of tough. I mean, we have to figure out how to change the perception and start at an earlier age. And that, the Be Pro, Be Proud exhibit here is a great example of that. Being able to get that out in the tour and let everyone just see what's really there. It's not the oil changing type scenario it always has been. It's so much more technical. So first we got to change perception, and by doing that, and then we have to get better at setting career paths that same has been afforded to myself and many others in here. You have to be able to clearly show that road and set those examples coming in, and use examples. We, as a company, we do that internally, whether it's drivers in operations or technicians in the management or whatever. We try to showcase that as a company to show our culture and help bring people in.
And there certainly are a lot of opportunities that exist in fleet maintenance, a lot of good, well-paying jobs, and like you mentioned, opportunity for advancement and movement into other aspects of the business and into management. But in your own words, why should young people really consider a career in this field? If you're young, if you're trying to figure out what your direction in life is going to be, why should you take a hard look at truck maintenance?
Ultimately, it's very stable type industry and jobs, and with a lot of opportunity for growth in different directions. There is no one size fits all, and there is no day that's the same. So if you're looking for that new excitement and always trying to strive for new goals and different things, this is the industry to do that.
And I'll just ask you again to reflect on your your own work. You've been in fleet maintenance for a long time. What do you enjoy most about the line of work that you're in and the industry overall? What has kept you in it for over the years?
For me personally, it's because it's different, right? Yeah. It's not the same thing every day. You may experience some of the same issues throughout, but at the end of the day, especially in our company, we touch so many different aspects of the industry that every day is always different for me, and that's what I really enjoy.
Sure. And I also want to touch on technology. Of course, as we mentioned, trucks are becoming increasingly high tech, and there are even more changes on the horizon. We start to see the beginnings of electric vehicles in some applications, and more and more sophisticated driver assist technology with sensors and radar and cameras on board. So there's really a lot happening. There's a lot coming in terms of changes in trucking equipment. Of those changes in terms of technology, what do you think will have the biggest impact on the industry, especially the maintenance side of the industry?
So I guess current path, I would probably say the electrification is going to be the biggest one that we're going to have to swallow. What comes after that and which direction it goes, I think there's a lot of opportunity there, but I guess I would say that would be my biggest one currently.
Sure, so that's definitely a whole new animal for fleet maintenance when you look at a very different type of vehicle.
That's right, and I mean redundant systems will be in the running as well. As autonomous picks up and all, but more recent, the electrification will make the difference.
And then Stacy, a final question I'll leave you on. I just want to get your thoughts on what you think are the most interesting takeaways that you've taken from this year's TMC meeting and conference and exhibition, based on the conversation you've had and what you've seen in the exhibit hall and some of the meetings. What stands out the most to you this year?
I guess I would say the overall mood and atmosphere of this exhibit hall and everything. You hear a lot of buzz in the industry about things and maybe slowing down or differences there, and the atmosphere in here really isn't that. So that's kind of very encouraging to see. All the vendors that are here and the exhibits that are here, and the efforts put into that, and just the general vibe.
Sure, certainly a lot of activity, and I know that just covering the event, we've certainly barely had a moment to come up for air. So it's certainly been a busy event, and I do really appreciate you taking some time out of your very busy day to chat with us. And again, congratulations on your term ahead as General Chairman at TMC, and we wish you all the best of luck.
Thank you very much.
Transport topics in one word: authoritative.
Knowledge.
Outstanding.
Reliable.
We asked Transport Topics readers to describe us in one word.
Informative.
Informative.
Integrity.
The Bible. Authoritative.
The authority.
Transportation information, that's two, but I gotta have it both.
Physically large. Oh, that's 2 words.
Visit influence.ttnews.com/say hello to find out what they're talking about.
Before we close, let's take a moment to reconsider our original question. What will it take to bring in the next generation of technicians to maintain and repair the nation's commercial trucks? As we've heard from our guests, there's no single solution to this challenge. It will require a multi-pronged approach to bolster the industry's workforce over time. One key element is highlighting the well-paying jobs and the opportunities for advancement that are available in commercial vehicle maintenance. It's also important to change perceptions of the profession. Technicians are problem solvers. They're fixing increasingly high-tech trucks and working with new technologies. Sure, they still turn wrenches, but they also use diagnostic software to keep trucks and our economy up and running. When young people better understand the work that technicians do every day and the high-tech trucks that they work on, there's a great chance that more of them will take a closer look at the opportunities that exist in this industry. If you've enjoyed this episode of Road Signs, please let others know. Rate and review us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. If my questions have sparked questions of your own, share them with me and the Road Signs team. You can email us at share@ttnews.com. We'll read them and respond daily. And of course, we'll be back in 2 weeks with a fresh episode of Road Signs. Until then, I'm Seth Clevenger. Thank you for listening.